continuing to follow breaking news out in the gorge, where multiple wildfires have people on both sides of the river evacuating. Thanks for joining us. I'm Blair Best. Both of these fires sparked this afternoon. One is burning near Carson, Washington. It's called the Grant Lake Fire. The other, the Rowena Fire, is burning between Hood River and the Dalles. Now here's a look at the evacuation areas on the Oregon side. Level 3 go now evacuations are in effect. That's the red areas. The areas in yellow here are under Be Set, Level 2 evacuation orders, and Level 1 are Be Ready in green. Now, a couple of shelters are open right now in Wasco County. The Gloria Center will be open until 8 p.m. The address is there on your screen. The Dalles Middle School is open as well as a temporary shelter. And on the Washington side, the Skamania County Fairground is open for evacuees, including livestock. But for a look at what's going on north of the Columbia on the Washington side, let's go to Alma McCarty at the Grant Lake Fire near Carson. Alma, what's happening there now?
Hey Blair, we are actually a little further away from that fire. I got confirmation from the sheriff, Summer Shire, that is actually the Sand Hill Fire. The Grant Hill Fire, or the Grant Lake Fire, I should say, is a little further to the east. We are again on the western edge of things, and this is as far as we have been able to go while we've been out here today. However, we did see some cars that were able to go down this road here. There was previously a roadblock in this direction. However, do not let this fool you. State Route 14 from milepost 47 to 53 is still closed. The sheriff says that they are just allowing some of the people who live in this area to get back to their homes safely. And so there's a checkpoint further down. We are currently at a school where there are folks who are setting up. There are fire crews in this area who have been here really all afternoon using this as a staging point. Again, the sheriff, we spoke to her earlier and she tells me that this is early. However, they have been preparing. And at this point, they are telling folks you want to sign up for those alerts. You want to make sure that you are prepared. At this point in this area, it's level 2 evacuations. And she says that she does not believe that these evacuation zones are going to grow. However, she did say that, with the weather patterns and with the fire patterns, it's really just hard to tell. But we will be keeping an eye on things on both sides of the gorge this evening. For now, Blair, though, I will send it back to you.
All right, Alma McCarty, thanks so much. Let's go now to Chief Meteorologist Matt Zaffino. Matt, talk to us. What are conditions like in the gorge right now, and what's coming tonight?
You know what, Blair? It's still very, very windy out in the Dalles. This is a time lapse from earlier this afternoon of the Rowena fire. And look at it just pumping smoke out of the atmosphere. Really, really dramatic as it cleared in front of our camera. So we got a better look at the source region, the fire itself and the smoke. And when we switch to live, it's just a smoky. In fact, it's taken on a very dark look now as the smoke continues to just pour out of that fire. So there are some high clouds above that. That's not smoke related. The winds right now in the Dalles are gusting at 31 miles an hour. The winds, to answer your question, Blair, will back off a little bit overnight tonight, but not completely go away. Now, check out some of the peak wind gusts we had in the area. The Dalles peaked at 40 miles an hour. Dallasport on the Washington side of the river, 39. Celilo farther east, 36. Rowena close to the fire, a gust of 34. And Lyle out in the gorge had a gust of 43. Even saw one report on the east side of Hood River from a notoriously windy spot that had a gust of 60 miles an hour. So it's just been whipping out there. The winds right now, see, Hood River's not that bad. So that gives me hope that they'll be able to work on those fires west of Hood River out by Carson where Alma was and get those under control. But in the Dalles, it's still very windy. As I said, the winds will begin to back off a little bit overnight tonight. But see, the gusts only go down to about 22, 24 miles an hour, which is a whole lot better than 30 or 40 miles an hour, but it is still very windy. So tonight, gusts to 40 early, then the winds will slacken. Tomorrow, they ramp back up again with the heating of the day. We'll get wind gusts of 35 miles an hour. And Blair, it's still windy into Friday as the gusts continue to push about 30 miles an hour. So it's going to be a long road out there. Back to you.
All right, Matt Zaffino, thanks so much.
You bet.
Well, turning now to our other big story tonight in Portland's Central East Side. That's where Multnomah County plans to open a permanent sobering center. But now there are big questions about how exactly to pay for it after millions of dollars from the city of Portland are being withheld for now. And that curveball comes just a day before the county is set to approve its upcoming $4 billion budget. The county chair joins me live in just a few minutes to talk about it. But efforts to get the city to pay up now appear to be failing. Inside this warehouse off Portland's Southeast Grand Avenue, Multnomah County makes its latest move in the fight against addiction. This past spring, the county bought this former granite showroom with the goal of making it a permanent sobering center after Portland's previous sobering center shuttered in 2019. Now, I talked with the former owner of this building. He didn't want to go on camera, but he tells me that he's been here for 25 years and now he's moving his business to Tigard. He says that it was homelessness and increased crime that forced him to put this building on the market and move out of Portland. The 24/7 Sobering Center is meant to help those suffering from the very crisis that pushed this business out. It's set to have about 50 beds, offering sobering, withdrawal management, and deflection services, a place first responders can take people under the influence, freeing up jail and hospital space. That's if the county can find all the money to pay for it.
This is a much-needed service.
County Commissioner Julia Brim-Edwards has been leading the Sobering Center effort. The state has already handed over $25 million for the project.
We expect the city to be full partners.
The county was planning on getting $4 million over 2 years from the city of Portland to help fund it, but that hasn't happened yet.
I've been after the mayor for the last several months. I sent him a letter in April indicating that our expectation was that they would keep their commitment both this year and ongoing.
A spokesperson for the city told KGW that the mayor will provide the money once the permanent facility is up and running. After several delays, that's now set for the fall of 2027, despite past criticism from Portland Police Chief Bob Day, who pushed for a sooner start date.
Well, it is actually up and running. You could go look. We have 13 sobering beds. I talked to the mayor this morning. We have sobering beds currently that are available.
She's talking about these 13 sobering beds that recently opened inside the county's deflection center, where police take people caught solely with possession of hard drugs.
Those are sort of our bridge sobering beds until we open our permanent one, but we currently have sobering beds. Our expectation is that the city is going to help fund that.
I was disappointed that Mayor Wilson pulled it initially out of his budget.
Wednesday, inside Portland City Hall, Councilor Eric Zimmerman, Commissioner Brim-Edwards' former chief of staff, introduced an amendment to put $1 million from the city's opioid settlement money into funding the county sobering center. That amendment failed in an 8-4 vote.
I worry that if we get through this budget without signaling that Portland is at the table and sobering centers are important for our community, that we're going to send some bad signals about not being aligned.
Well, I voted against it mostly because, one, I was preparing, I have an amendment to put that $1.2 million towards Fora Health. I believe that this is a critical opportunity for us to add beds, right? The thing about the way that Councilor Zimmerman's amendment was, it was about programming, and it was about a sobering center that, we have this relationship with the county, and I think there's some discussion that we need to have about who's funding these kinds of things, because that's not necessarily something the city would fund.
It's the victim of just a new government, a lot of new people who don't understand the history here, and that this is one of those fallen through the cracks, which is pretty unfortunate.
Seen as the city of Portland would benefit from a permanent sobering center, those at the county are not taking no for an answer.
And our expectation is that at some point in their budget process that they will keep their commitment, both for this year, but for future years.
Well, time is of the essence, though. City Council held one of their final budget meetings today before they vote on June 18th. But County Commissioner Julia Brim-Edwards tells me budgeting is a year-long process. So she's banking on flexibility within the city's budget to help them pay for the permanent sobering center. Today, I saw people from the county walking through that granite showroom, soon-to-be sobering center, with clipboards. So we'll be watching how this all unfolds. Well, joining me live now is Multnomah County Chair Jessica Vega Peterson. Chair Vega Peterson, thanks for coming on the show.
Yeah, good evening, Blair.
So tomorrow, County Commission is set to vote on a final budget. We know the county is facing a $77 million deficit with 102 positions, multiple programs on the chopping block. When you released your proposed budget late April, it was met with some pushback from the district attorney's office facing some cuts. But there's been some amendments to restore some of that funding. Do you think that's going to happen?
Yeah, I think that there's been a lot of good work over the last several weeks with the whole board really leaning in and seeing how we can continue to serve the community's needs. I think that there are a few different amendments that are been proposed to fill the DA's budget. I think we'll see tomorrow how they go. I think there's different folks who are maybe supporting different ones. So I think we're just going to have to see how the whole thing goes tomorrow.
Have you thought about changing your mind at all and giving the DA's office the money that it says it needs to keep their current level of service?
I was very thoughtful with the investments that I made in the budget, both for public safety, looking at the full funding for the sheriff's department, the additional dollars for additional jail capacity if we need it in the next year, and also recognizing that we have 7 departments across the county that we're taking really serious cuts on a lot of the other things that we do for community safety. So for the DA's budget, I'm going to take a look at the package that we end up with as a whole, with all the different amendments, and really make my decision based on that.
What would you say are the biggest changes since your proposed budget and where things stand right now?
So for me, when I put my budget out, I was very intentional about funding homeless services, knowing that we had such a big deficit in the supportive housing service measure dollars that were expected to come in versus what we're going to actually receive, knowing that we have a really critical need in our community to fund those things. And so I had moved about $30 million of general fund already from other department, county services and programs into homeless services. That has actually been increased by some of the amendments that have been brought forward by the board. So I think we'll see an even bigger increase after tomorrow for homeless services. I think just shows like everybody knows that this is an urgent situation that we have to keep responding to. So I think that is one of the biggest changes. But I think we're also seeing a real commitment to trying to fund direct services. That was something that was a priority for me, but we're also seeing it in some of the restorations that are proposed in amendments for things like school-based mental health or legal services or things like that.
We mentioned earlier about 100 positions on the chopping block. What department may see the deepest staff cuts?
That is, I know that our health department is seeing a lot. They're also the largest department though. So from a percentage of the department, it might be less, but we're going to see a lot of vacancies, a lot of cuts there. Again, we tried to really focus on positions that were already vacant, but unfortunately that's not going to be 100% the case.
Going back to funding for homeless services, will the Old Town InReach program still be eliminated, do you think? I mean, that's a team of peer support specialists that Portland Day Centers tell me that they heavily rely on.
Yeah, that is one that I don't know that there's been an amendment put forward for. So at this point, I don't know that that's going to be restored.
Okay, Chair Jessica Vega Peterson, thanks so much for coming on the show.
Thank you so much.
Now, just a few hours ago, I caught up with County Commissioner Julia Brim-Edwards. She represents District 3. And here's what her priorities are heading into tomorrow's vote. Listen.
One, we need to reduce the number of homelessness, provide people with a path from the streets to housing. Second, it would be behavioral health issues, provide more access to mental health services, and also access on paths to treatment, including having a sobering center, withdrawal services, and treatment services. And third would be public safety.
She also introduced amendments to help with the district attorney's budget.
The first is funding the auto and organized retail theft task force, which is really important. We've had an escalated level of auto thefts. Mm-hmm. This task force has helped bring it down, and we want to continue that trend. Second, all of the law enforcement jurisdictions in the county now use body-worn cameras, and that requires additional resources, so providing resources so that video footage can actually be used. And this is a really important police accountability tool.
And in a statement, Commissioner Vince Jones-Dixon said in part, "My priorities are focused on driving public safety and economic opportunity for District 4 and the communities of East County. Our needs differ from those of the city of Portland, and I appreciate my colleagues recognizing that by compromising and making trade-offs." Well, joining me now live is County Commissioner Shannon Singleton, representing District 2. Commissioner Singleton, thanks for coming on the show.
It's great to see you again, Blair. Thank you.
Yes, I saw you earlier today. Let's start with what your top priorities are heading into tomorrow's vote.
So I think, to start with, just I had put out a press release about SHS dollars, supportive housing services dollars in other departments, and really wanting to find ways to make sure that we were getting that back into core services. And so some of my budget amendments are just that, cutting some other programs from the Department of County Human Services, for example, to bring SHS dollars back to homeless services. But then additionally, I was able to find that that same program only required $300,000 of general fund as opposed to 900,000 of SHS, because with general fund they can leverage Medicaid match. And so we're actually saving ourselves some money on one of those amendments that I have in front of the board. Additionally, I had some priorities around things like voter education. I'm very concerned about the reduction for East County not receiving any education when the county will be going to our first ranked choice voting. And they didn't get that education during the city of Portland change. And so it felt really critical to me that we have some of that education happening. Additionally, I really looked at opportunities to refund some programs in the health department, particularly at the STI clinic, as well as thinking really broadly about what public safety looks like. And one of my bigger amendments is to refund legal services include expungement, eviction prevention, support at eviction court, as well as support in getting people through some of the barriers that they have to housing placement.
So we know tomorrow they're still going to be talking about the budget. Are any of those priorities for you totally non-negotiable?
The permanent supportive housing was a very big one for me, and I think we found a good compromise today to make sure that some of our shelters that we know are slated to close during the fiscal year are still able to operate until their closure date, but that we then use that money for permanent supportive housing to make sure that we're really investing in that back end where we know it's about the housing with supports that helps people end their homelessness.
And where do you stand on the potential cuts to the district attorney's office?
So one of my amendments does include a reduction in the district attorney's office. I think that I've said from the front end of this budget process that the district attorney reductions that I saw in the chair's proposed budget really are in line with the types of reductions that we saw across the enterprise, and that I think it's really important that all of us are taking some of these reductions, and it's not being on one specific program or department or agency. And so I know that the DA also had additional ad packages that he was requesting, but I think it's really important to separate the two. So I think that that reduction is comparable to what we've seen across other departments at the county.
Speaking of reductions, do you support totally eliminating the Old Town InReach program?
I really was trying to find some funds to be able to refund that program, and particularly looking at opportunities to get it in line with some of the navigation work that we do. But honestly, it's been very challenging to find offsetting cuts for programs, and I really focused on some of the big ones that we know have really big outcomes for people, again, in ending their homelessness. Not that these other programs aren't important or meaningful, because they absolutely are. And if I had another $1 million, that would have been one of my budget amendments. I just could not find offsetting cuts for that.
We do know that $6 million is being proposed for harm reduction efforts. Do you support that?
I do support harm reduction efforts. Again, it's more than what I think a lot of people think about with harm reduction as far as needle exchange. It is very much about supporting people as they're trying to enter into recovery and developing those relationships with them to really use motivational interviewing and helping people move forward on their journey to recovery. And so I think it's important that when we think about the whole continuum of addiction services, the front end is harm reduction and the back end is really getting folks into those long-term treatment centers if they need longer term, or providing that outpatient clinical treatment setting for those who can thrive with that model.
Okay, Commissioner Singleton, thank you for your time tonight.
Thank you so much, Blair.
Okay, now it's your turn to chime in. What do you think about what you heard tonight from the county chair and the other commissioners? Whether it's about the Sobering Center or tomorrow's budget vote, let us know. Email us at thestory@kgw.com or call and leave a voicemail, 503-226-5090. Well, coming up next on The Story, we'll take you to South Portland for the latest on the immigration protest at the ICE facility there. Look at that video. What appears to be pepper balls and flashbangs were used against protesters last night. We'll show you how things look now when The Story returns. Well, welcome back. We're taking a live look at the Dalles and the fires developing there. Take a look at that huge plume of smoke. These wildfires, they sparked earlier today. We've got crews on the ground, and we'll bring you more coverage coming up tonight at 7 and 11 o'clock. Well, here at home, people protesting outside of an ICE facility in southwest Portland were pushed back by agents using what appeared to be pepper balls and flashbangs late Tuesday night. John Adams is out near where the protests are happening. And John, you spoke with people that were there last night. What'd they tell you?
Blair, that's exactly right. I spoke with two people who saw the entire incident play out late last night. One of those people was hit by one of those pepper balls. They told me the incident started after protesters used debris to block the driveway heading into that ICE facility. That's when the agents appeared with their armored vehicle behind them trying to disperse the crowd. Now, OPB is reporting that those agents were with the Department of Homeland Security. We have not been able to independently verify that right now. I have reached out to Homeland Security and haven't heard back whether or not those agents were with them. Blair?
Scary situation. John, were Portland police involved at all?
Blair, Portland police did show up a little bit after midnight last night to de-escalate the crowd that was gathered out here, but they said they didn't deploy anything and no arrests were made by them.
It seems pretty calm at the moment, but I do see a crowd behind you. How are things out there right now?
Well, Blair, when we were out here earlier today, there was only about a dozen people. That was about maybe 11:15, 11:30 this morning. The crowd has definitely grown now, but it hasn't grown to the level of what it was last night when one person I spoke to said they thought there was about 75 people at this time last night or a little later in the evening last night. But the crowd has definitely grown throughout the day. Blair?
Okay. Stay safe out there. John Adams in South Portland tonight. John, thanks. And Los Angeles Mayor Karen Bass is again enacting a curfew for the city. She said last night's curfew helped stem looting and vandalism during protests against immigration enforcement. But Bass, along with 30 mayors from the region again today, put the blame for the protests on the Trump administration. Bass says the curfew will be enacted daily until it's no longer deemed necessary. We're back right after this. Well, that is the end of our show, folks. Thanks so much for watching. And don't forget, everyone has a story to tell. Instead of the good stuff coming up next, it'll be a normal newscast to bring you the latest on those fires in the gorge. And of course, you can expect full reports tonight on the news at 11. In the meantime, have a great night. I'll see you right back here tomorrow night at 6:30. And we'll leave you with a live picture of that smoke in the Dalles.